Hello, my name's Jane and I'm 31 years old. A year or so ago, I finally realized how horribly I was being treated in my relationship, not only by my husband, but also by his parents, so I decided to leave them. In doing so, I also managed to get some good revenge on them. Let me start by telling you a little about myself. I grew up in a pretty affluent family. We weren't big celebrities or people with immense power, but we were a big name in the niche where my parents had their business. Anyway, I managed to get a good start in life thanks to the connections that my parents had. I got into a great university right after I graduated high school, and after graduating from university, I got a great job with one of my dad's best friends. I was paid way beyond a regular fresher's pay, but I had been interning at that company since I started college, so I knew the ropes already and I'd proven my worth as an employee. Anyway, a few months after I graduated college, I met my ex-husband, Brandon. We happened to meet because he was a friend of a friend of a friend. We'd all gone drinking together, and that's when Brandon and I met each other. We hit off right off the bat. We went on several dates after that day, and we eventually began dating each other. At that time, Brandon's parents had been living in another state, so I never got to meet them properly until the day of our wedding. Brandon and I dated for 3 years before getting married. At the wedding, I barely had any time to interact properly with his parents, but I remember thinking they seemed like nice people. Oh, how wrong I was. Brandon's parents, Leanne and Arnold, ended up moving to our state because most of their family lived here and they wanted to be closer to Brandon. As a result, Brandon and I began meeting with them a lot more often, and from the first proper meeting I had with them, I knew that they absolutely hated me. They would not stop commenting on how poor I was or not attractive enough I was for Brandon. I didn't mind their comments about my looks, but I was most confused about their view of our finances. You see, Brandon made a very average income, while I made 4 times what he did. I contributed to all of the household expenses except for the groceries, which he contributed to. So for them to constantly bring up how lazy and how much of a burden I was on Brandon for making him work so much confused me beyond words. Every time I tried to talk to Brandon about it, he would shrug it off or he would find some way to evade the topic. One particular day, we had dinner with his parents right after we bought ourselves a new car. His parents kept praising him and kept making jabs at me for not contributing to the purchase. Just as I was about to speak up about it, Brandon cut me off and changed the topic. I was beyond annoyed that day, so while we were on our way back home, I decided to ask Brandon what was going on. He had no way to escape the conversation, so he had to tell me the truth. I have an idea of where this is going to go. Good. Whenever we meet your parents, why do you always jump in to shut me up when I try to tell them that I bought things or funded things for us? What is going on? I've been losing my mind, and every time I try to talk to you about it, you find some way to avoid answering my questions. Now we're in a car driving on the highway and you have nowhere to go. So tell me, what is going on? I really didn't want to have to talk about this because it's really embarrassing for me. More embarrassing than constantly being belittled and insulted? First of all, I'm really sorry that I haven't said anything about the way my parents have been treating you. I was hoping that with time, they'd stop being so mean. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Why haven't you said anything to them about it? Why haven't you even said anything to me? It hurts like crazy when you pretend that whatever your parents were saying to me never happened. I know, and I really felt horrible about it. I just never knew how to tell you about it. Great. I've created an opening for you now. Explain. All right. My parents had always been very financially unstable. And even now, they're very unstable. They tried to turn to me for help, but I kept telling them that I had invested my money in several areas when in reality, I wasn't doing any better than them. Now they think that I've made some crazy amount of money from investing in a lot of great stocks and that you married me for that money. So you lied to them for years and now you're letting me take the fall for it? You see why I was too embarrassed to talk about it? I feel really bad that I threw you under the bus like this. Why don't you just tell them that your investments failed and you don't have as much? I'm sure they'd appreciate the fact that I'm helping you then. They're way too proud of me for me to do that. I know it's very unfair of me to ask you to keep up with my lies, but they're the only family I have, and I want them to be proud of me, even if it's because of a lie. That's really sad, and it's really unfair to me. All right, I'll tell them the truth. All right, I'll tell them the truth. But I love you, and I understand that you're only doing this because you want to feel validated by your parents, so I'll keep up with your lies. Just be there for me after your parents insult me like I'm too stupid to understand them. Of course. You're amazing. I have no idea how I ever managed to get married to a woman as great as you. Oh, shut up, Brandon. I don't know why I agreed to keep up with Brandon's lies at that time. I remember being really upset with Brandon as soon as he told me the truth, but I loved him so much that I forgot about it and decided to help him out instead. In hindsight, that should have been my cue to leave him, because I realized that by pretending to not earn as much, Brandon's parents probably thought that I was the reason their son wasn't helping them out. Anyway, keeping up with Brandon's lie turned out to be disastrous for me. I had to keep up an appearance of not having much money, so anytime we went out with Brandon's parents, I'd hand Brandon enough money to cover all our expenses, and I'd have to watch his parents swoon over how financially stable he was while also bearing the brunt of their insults about how lazy I was. It hurt even more because Brandon would never stand up for me. He just let his parents insult me all they wanted while he put his head down and waited for it to end. Once again, I never said anything to him about that. I figured that he was probably struggling with keeping up with his image as well, so putting him down like that would only make him feel worse. I let Leanne and Arnold insult me all they wanted, and I also let Brandon get away with never standing up for me or even apologizing after they left. About 2 years into our marriage, Brandon and I decided that we wanted to go on a trip. It was our New Year's resolution, so we decided to save up. And by we, I mean I saved up because Brandon did not earn enough money to save up for a huge vacation. Anyway, during that year, I noticed that Leanne and Arnold got even more snappy with me. And then I learned that they were going through an even tougher time than they were already going through. Even though they bullied me, I still felt bad for them. I wanted to help them out, but I saw no way to do that without involving Brandon in it. But then I remembered the vacation that we had planned and figured I had saved up enough money over the months to cover all of our expenses. So one night, while Brandon and I were watching one of our favorite shows, I decided to bring up the topic of our pending vacation. Hey, we're already in the middle of the year and we still haven't decided on a vacation. Vacation? Yeah, we decided that we would go together this year because it's been a while since we went on one. Oh, yeah, well, I can take some time off this month, so we could do it now. All right, where do you want to go? What is our budget? Can we leave our country or do we go to another state? We have more than enough saved up to do 2 trips to different countries, so I think we should go abroad. All right then. How about we do Italy? I mean, we've always talked about going there, plus they have great food and places to see. I really like that. I was actually hoping you'd say that. I know you too well. You can go ahead and book the tickets. Let me know when we're going though, so I can take off from work accordingly. Yeah, I was thinking, how about 2 weeks from today? All right, I'll take off from then. Also, I have something else I need to discuss with you. Yeah? What is it? Your parents have been struggling a lot these last few months. I was wondering if you'd be okay to invite them along with us. You want them to come along? Yeah, I know that they're not at their best right now, and maybe taking a break would make them feel better. And who knows, maybe they'll even come to like me. I don't know how they'll pay for it when they're already barely getting through the months. I know, that's why I wanted to pay for all of their expenses. What? Isn't that going to be really expensive for us? It will, but we have more than enough money for it. Okay, but why do you want to do this for them? They've been nothing but mean to you, and I don't see why you want to do it. I know they've been mean to me, but that doesn't mean I have to be mean to them too. I've always kept shut whenever they've said something, and I've done my best to be the better person. I'm only asking to invite them because I feel like they're already close to their retirement ages, and they're still struggling, and that must be hard for them. If this will make them feel better, then I don't see why we shouldn't invite them. Well, that's really sweet of you, but you know that inviting them would mean that we'll have to act like I'm the one paying for everything, right? Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind. So, shall we invite them to dinner next week? And in that time, I'll get everything booked and ready for us. All right, sounds good. I felt good that I was doing something nice for Brandon's parents, even though they were always rude to me. I knew I wouldn't get the credit for it, but somewhere deep down, I'd hoped that Brandon would come clean and tell his parents the truth. I was very foolish to think that. Anyway, Brandon and I spent the rest of the week ironing out the details of our trip, and after I'd purchased all of our tickets, Brandon invited Leanne and Arnold over for dinner. I worked hard to make a good dinner, and I hoped they appreciated it. Because I worked so hard, Brandon took care of setting the table and doing the rest of the work during dinner time. And of course, that's the only thing that his parents noticed. They didn't say anything about it until Leanne asked what the dinner was about. So what's this dinner all about? Does this need to have something about it? I can't imagine that you do all of this work for nothing. You've barely gotten up to serve us or set the table since we got here. There must be something big that you want to tell us. Hey, calm down. Jane was just playing around with you. Anyway, you're right. There is a reason for this dinner. Please tell me you guys aren't pregnant. It would be horrible to bring a baby into your relationship when Jane can barely do anything herself. You'll end up parenting your child and Jane. This has nothing to do with Jane. We're not pregnant. Stop trying to drag her into everything. Fine, then just get to it. What's going on? We've noticed how you guys have been having a hard time recently, so we decided to try to make things better so you feel good. What do you mean? In a week, all of us will be going on a 2-week-long vacation to Italy. What? But son, you know we can't afford that. That's why it'll be paid for entirely by us. You mean it'll be paid for by my son? You don't even make enough to pay for a vacation for yourself. But Brandon, are you sure you can afford to pay for all of us? Yeah, you already have your hands full with this one. You guys don't have to worry about a thing. You've already done that enough, and I thought you deserved a break. All you have to do is enjoy this vacation that we've planned for you. But how come the sudden plan? Your mother and I appreciate that you thought of us like this, but there must have been something else, right? Not really. Jane and I haven't gone on vacation in a long while, so we decided to go on one this year. And then I saw how much you two were struggling and I wanted you to come along. You guys have done so much for me. This is literally the least that I could do for you. Oh, darling, that's so sweet of you. Thank you so much for this. You have no idea how refreshing this will be for us. I agree. Thanks a lot, Brandon. I raised a fine man, didn't I? We raised a fine man. So what places will we be visiting? My friends have traveled to Italy many times, so I could always ask. There'll be no need for that. Jane will be taking care of the itinerary. Are you sure you'll do a good job, Jane? Or that you'll do the job at all? Please stop thinking that I do nothing. I am very capable of doing things. I will make the itinerary with all of you in mind, so I'll make sure that all of us will enjoy the trip. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll have dinner in my room where I'm not being constantly insulted. Once again, I should have considered that a sign and canceled the trip immediately, but I was too blinded by my need to help Arnold and Leanne and my need for them to like me. I was tired of constantly being put down, and I'd hoped that the vacation would change that. So even though I left them all sitting at the dining table to eat my dinner in my room, I still went ahead and worked hard to figure out the best itinerary for all of us. I made sure I knew what everyone liked, and I planned it accordingly. When it came time to travel, Leanne and Arnold practically ignored me. That stung. But I thought that that was better than them insulting me the entire journey there. What really hurt, though, was Brandon ignoring me as well. He only stayed with his parents and talked to them while I stood there like an idiot. The only time he'd approach me was to ask for money. When we got to Italy, all of us were so exhausted from the journey we fell asleep almost immediately. But we made up for lost time over the next 2 days. We explored a bunch of places, and I had a good time. Leanne and Arnold still made jabs at me, and Brandon was still barely talking much to me, but I learned to get used to it and figured out that I could have fun by myself. On our 3rd day there, all of us woke up pretty late, so we met up for brunch. And once we were all seated, Leanne commented on how beautiful the country was. This place is beautiful. Brandon, you really knocked it out of the park with picking this country for a vacation. Thanks, guys. I knew you two would love it. Yeah, I'm really glad you guys like it. Brandon and I did our best to make the best itinerary for us. There's a lot more fun ahead. I'm sure you did as much work as Brandon did for this trip. What's that supposed to mean? We know that our son was the one who worked really hard to get us on this trip. Knowing how you barely do anything, I'm sure that you dumped all the work on him, and now you're trying to take credit for it. That's not true. Brandon, tell them everything I've done for this trip. Yeah, I don't know what exactly you did either. You can't be serious right now. Just drop it, Jane. We'll be going to the beach in 2 hours, so make sure to eat well and then get some rest before. Are you coming along, Jane, or will you be too tired? Of course I'm coming. Ugh, why does this lazy freeloader have to come along everywhere? Excuse me? What do you mean by lazy freeloader? Wow. Are you really that lazy that you can't even look up definitions of words? Or are you just stupid? Why do you guys think I'm a freeloader? We can't help but notice how you barely work. You constantly have Brandon pay for everything because you have no money of your own. This is why we warned Brandon against marrying you. All you do is sit around and enjoy doing nothing while our son works really hard to earn the money that you use to lavishly spend on everything you want. That is not true at all. Brandon always insists on paying while he's around you guys because he does not want to be embarrassed by the fact that I earn 4 times more than him. At home, I'm the one who takes care of all the expenses. Whatever he earns, he only contributes towards groceries and the rest is his fun money. You really think a pathetic lie would change the way we see you? Stop demeaning the person that's been helping you out and show him some respect. Brandon, do you really have nothing to say in this conversation? Jane, please. Fine, I'll go back home. I hope all of you have fun. I don't know what happened, but at that moment I snapped. I guess all the emotions that I had been suppressing and trying to play off as nothing finally caught up to me and exploded. Usually I would have let their comments roll off my back like it was nothing, but hearing them say all of that on a trip that I had paid for entirely out of my own pocket made me lose my mind. Brandon siding with them and not saying anything was the final straw for me. I made my way back to the hotel and packed all my things. I canceled the bookings for the rooms there, although Brandon and his parents would still be able to stay there for that night. I got into a taxi and sped off to the airport. Buying a ticket back to the US was expensive, but I didn't care. I wanted to go home and leave all of them miserable. I knew that none of them had enough money to come back, let alone to spend in a foreign country. I spent the entire flight back home crying, and by the time I reached Brandon's and my apartment, I fell asleep really fast. When I woke up the next day, I felt like my entire life had been shattered, but I knew that I still had an ace up my sleeve. I canceled every single reservation I'd made for our trip, and I also canceled all the return tickets. I wanted to see how Brandon and his parents would find their way back. In my anger, I forgot to ask Brandon for the money I'd given him, but I knew that it wouldn't last him very long, and I was right. A week later, Leanne called me begging for help. Hi, Jane. Are you home? Yeah, what is it? We really need your help. Please help us. Oh, what do you mean? We didn't realize that you were speaking the truth. Please send us some money. We're stranded here. We only have enough money for today and then we'll be left here to starve. Why don't you ask your precious son to help you out? Since he worked so hard to pay for my lavish lifestyle, I'm sure that he can help you out now. No, he confessed everything to us. We had no idea that you had been helping him out. Well, I guess that it's good that you figured that out. So does that mean you'll help us out? No, I'm not helping you guys out. What? Why? You've tormented me for years. You judged my worth by how much money I made. You guys don't even have enough money to get through 1 month, and you were piling on me because you thought I was living off of your son. I don't see any reason to help you out. I invited you on this trip out of love and courtesy, and you repaid me by humiliating me. And we're sorry for that. Isn't that enough? Put yourself in my shoes. If I treated you even a little bit the same way you treated me, would you even answer my call for help? You know what? I know you wouldn't. I didn't help you out with a dinner party once, and you made it your life's mission to make my life miserable at every dinner I hosted for us. I get it. We've been horrible to you, but you can't leave Brandon stranded like this. Don't you love him? I loved him, yes, but he's shown me that he cared more about how you guys felt about him than about how I felt because of how you treated me. He'd rather paint me in a bad light than let his parents know the truth. He watched me get insulted over and over again and never said anything about it because he didn't want his parents to judge him. I don't want a husband like that. You can't leave us like this. Please. Look, just help us out this one time. I'll make sure all of us get out of your life without any problems. Whether I help you out or not, you'll be out of my life. I don't want to help you out anymore. I've done more than enough for you guys, and you've only hurt me in the process. Figure out how to get back home by yourselves. Tell Brandon that when he returns, the divorce papers will be waiting for him at home. Bye. It felt great to finally stand up for myself. I knew that I was being cruel, but I also knew that their apologies were never genuine. They were only apologizing because they needed my help to get back. My days of being tormented and made fun of were over. I still have no idea why I only snapped that day when I should have snapped years ago. Not once did they waste an opportunity to make fun of me. And Brandon not standing up for me only made things worse. I found one of the best divorce attorneys in my city and enlisted his help with my divorce. I was sure that Brandon would try to do something during the divorce, but I was going to have none of it. I had a lot of proof of Leanne's and Arnold's emotional abuse towards me and of Brandon's ignorance about it. Needless to say, if Brandon started fighting for alimony, I would start fighting for reparations for emotional abuse. I took my time filing for the divorce because I knew that it would be a while before Brandon, Leanne, and Arnold made their way back. In that time, I emptied out our apartment of all my things, and I found another one for myself. Our lease was ending in a month anyway, so right before I left the apartment, I paid for my share of the rent for the next month, and I left the divorce papers on the dining table for Brandon. I told our landlord that I would be leaving and that if he wanted to renew the lease, he could pick that conversation up with Brandon. About a week after Leanne called me asking for help, the three of them came back. I knew they did because the first thing that Brandon did when he landed was call me. He hadn't called me since I left, so I knew that him calling me then was an indication that he was back. He demanded I book them a cab back home because I had already left them stranded once. I told him that I wasn't going to do any of that and hung up on him. He kept blowing up my phone with calls, but I ignored them. He managed to get himself back home, and then my phone began flooding with messages about the divorce papers. I told him that the divorce was happening regardless of what he said. He called me pathetic for ruining our relationship over a simple comment from his mother. But I reminded him that these simple comments from his mother had been coming since the start of our relationship, and he never stood up for me. I was doing him a huge favor by helping him keep his lie up, and he repaid me in the worst way possible. Then Brandon went from being angry to profusely apologizing. I simply told him that none of his apologies would work. So, of course, Brandon chose to contest the divorce. He then tried to claim alimony from me, but I countered with the emotional abuse I experienced at the hands of his family, which he enabled. Needless to say, the divorce took way too long, but eventually, Brandon and I came to an agreement outside of court, and we divided our assets on our own terms. Brandon figured out that this divorce was going to cost him way more than he wanted, and that he'd only keep struggling if he drew the whole thing out, which is why he was okay with coming to a mutual decision about it all. As for how the three of them got back from Italy, I happened to get in touch with Brandon's cousin's sister, who I happened to run into in a cafe. I had always been fond of her, and she and I were pretty close. She wasn't the biggest fan of Brandon's parents, so she was more than ready to tell me about how they got back. Apparently, they had to ask a bunch of family members for money to get them through the rest of their stay. I had also booked the flights back home from an entirely different area from where we originally landed, so they also needed money to travel there. In addition to that, they had no idea that I had canceled their tickets. So they ended up traveling all the way there only to realize that their tickets were invalid. They had to borrow even more money to get back home. Basically, they now owe a bunch of their relatives a lot of money, which is honestly a great ending for them. The divorce was finalized a few weeks ago, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. I no longer have to keep up with any lies, and I get to do whatever I want without having to worry about what somebody else might think of it. It'll be a while before I start dating again, but I'm sure that once I get back to it, I'll be more careful with who I choose for a partner. That's it for now. Thank you so much for listening to my story.